Nice. Thank you. All right, here we are. So, Casey, our beloved Casey, um, in the retreat that we held about, I think it was by now 3 weeks or a month ago, we kind of dove deeply into the stories we tell ourselves. And what came out of the retreat is a common experience by everyone who attended of a sense of aloneness, and that feeds into um, experiencing oneself or telling ourselves stories um, that diminish from who we are, and that the stories repeat themselves mechanically and automatically. And as we know that that's common to just about um, all human beings. For some reason, there are these stories of self diminishing that prevent us from um, becoming the people we know we can be, or we want to be, or that we feel that we really truly are. And so Casey has gone through a process that addresses these issues in a very, very methodical and loving way. And not just one process, actually, Casey's gone through several processes, but in particular, there is a process that has the acronym GRIP, GRIP, and that process um, helps people in prison gain their freedom. It has an incredible success rate, right, Casey?
Yeah, very high.
Very, very high, like 90%.
I believe so.
And it's really truly based on, first and foremost, developing over 1 year, Casey.
Yeah, a 12-month period. Once a month, the men will meet together for 8-hour duration.
And do homework in between.
Yeah,
And it fosters a very, very deep sense of belonging, right?
community,
Community,
sense of interconnectedness.
interconnectedness, not just with the members of the tribe, but also with ancestors, family.
Ancestors, with the material, with the interconnectedness goes many directions. The interconnection with the self, the different aspects and layers of oneself, it also ties in with definitely.
So I thought that today Casey can introduce us to the process so we can all understand that number one, that there is a process.
Yes.
And number two, what you yourself have internalized from that experience.
Definitely. Yeah, GRIP is I was very fortunate enough to be exposed to a lot of different types of material and teachings while inside, a lot more so than a lot of other men. So I had already begun my process of introspection, looking at the reasons why I was the way I was and capable of doing the things I was capable of doing. And I found that I found myself in a situation where all my external ways of going outwards were taken from me. And the only natural thing that was left for me was insanity or turning within, which is basically the same thing in some ways. So I remember being a young boy and knowing what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be a Marine. And so I remember at one point I was struck with, because of my actions and the crimes that I committed, that reality and that dream was taken away. And so I was confronted with this internal struggle of not being able to fulfill my purpose and my direction in life. And I remember coming across some of the concepts of fate and the norns, the muses, and all. And all in my searching, the topic of fate and love and different types of concepts kept coming up. And I remember when I came to Grip, one of these really powerful concepts that brought together succinctly the things that I was studying was amore fiate. Uh, this concept of love beyond, agape, and it was this like all-encompassing love, like this pure type of like a lot of what we talk about in the Buddhist traditions, loving the self, loving the divine, and bhakti in a lot of ways from the Hindu tradition.
Do you want to amor fati? I think it means loving one's fate.
Loving one's
Is
fate.
that what it is?
So amore means love, and a fiate is so it's Latin for loving one's fate, but it delves in deeper into the concept of fate in many different ways, like the fate that we make through not through like predetermination, but predetermination in the sense of like through habitual and continuous actions, we make a fate that is unescapable. So, or through karma. So there's many ways of looking at this type of fate, but really what it comes down to is like this ability to wholly and completely accept and surrender and be okay with the situation in which you're in, this loving of your faith, but also encompassing how do you get to that point? How do you get to like, so I found myself in this situation in complete just inner turmoil for a long time and couldn't go outwards. I couldn't fulfill the destiny that I felt I was here for. So what was I left to do?
You mean here for like here in this world?
In this existence.
In existence, okay.
Yeah, so I felt that I was to be a soldier, and a lot of my life and my upbringing was predicated on that. I was raised by Marines that came back from Vietnam, other men. So there was a succession of, but it was more than that. I felt a sense of camaraderie, of belonging, that we talk about this interconnectedness. You know, I mean, the motto of the Marines were "Semper Fi, always faithful." That there was the concept of no man left behind. And so like a lot of these internal principles, a lot of these teachings were internalized in me from a very young age. And so
it sounds like it had almost like a tribal and ancestral feeling to it.
There is a lot of qualities that, so like you go back far enough, most of the bands were tribal, more warrior-esque, and so they would, through this struggle, pain, and strife, and these sheer commonality, these men become very bonded, very cohesive, and very like loving and tender, but also like supportive of each other. And so coming to Grip, one of the things that they realized was that almost all the men there were for violence, had done it, and also had it done to them. And so we come to realize that, you know what I mean, the culture that which we find ourselves in is one predicated upon fear, violence, and many other baser emotions. But that separates out even further back into the society, our collectives, and you know what I mean, we were taught at a very young age about what it means to be male in relation to our feelings and our emotions, and a lot of these really difficult topics. And so getting to the point to amor fiati, where you can sit and be accepting and loving of that, the fate in which you find yourself in, this radical acceptance of just being in that moment and being okay with it and not fighting it, was very difficult for me.
Is that what you called earlier sitting in the fire?
So for me, like getting to the point of that, like I had learned about sitting in the fire, like I said, before I came to Grip, but I found that Grip succinctly put words to things that I was doing and concepts that I didn't quite have solidified like inside of like the vocabulary. Just there were practices that I were doing, and so one of it was that it started with a peaceful abiding with me with Doug in a lot of ways. When Doug came to Pleasant Valley, he brought the teaching of sitting, peaceful abiding, sitting in that moment and learning to just be present, breathe, watch the breath come in, watch the breath come out. So that in itself is a process that is immensely difficult and takes stages of development. So I had to go through a process of just learning to sit, be be in that moment. And my body wanted to rebel. It wanted to just fight. It was like a horse that trying to put a bridle on, and it just wanted to just do its own thing and go its own way. And so it took a training of getting my body just accepting of just being able to sit and be okay with the pain, the discomforts, the desire not to move, all the things that happen when we know we go to sit. Mm-hmm. And so there was this gradual learning to love and turn into that.
How do you mean learning to love?
Repetition.
In that. Oh.
Through repetition. And so there's a conditioning that I was going through, you know what I mean? Because no one had ever taught me what sitting was, to be still and to be present in that moment. I was always moving this way or that way in my mind, or going backwards and forward, projecting in the future, you know, worrying about this. I never had learned to just to sit and be in that moment and center in that. And so the process of sitting in the fire began with that for me. It was this, okay, I got to the point where I can sit now. My body stopped rebelling. Now the real challenges and the true difficulty for me came is that because I'd had a very traumatic and hard upbringing and had accumulated a lot of baggage and pain, what we would come to call in the grip terminology would be original pain moments. These pivotal events in our life, in our early childhood and forward into adulthood, where we would be victimized or hurt or like damaged in some kind of way that would set a pattern that would continue forward into, you know what I mean, adult life and forward. And so
could you give an example like you gave me today? Small example.
So one of my original like lesser trauma original pain moments was in relation to my belief structure. I remember I got into a really bad fight with another kid at school, and I came home bloodied and beat up, and I remember my father seeing me and being very like stern and angry with me, and he's like, "Why are you crying, boy? What is going on here? Boys don't cry. We don't do this. That's not something men do." And then I went on to explain what happened, and so that progressed into further lessons and other types of patterning of behavior that set pivotal brain structures and modes of experiencing and being a male and how interacting with other males in relation to conflict, violence, and interpersonal relationships. And in some of my introspection, I started observing and seeing how this internal dialogue that would go in relation to some of these events that I was having had my father's voice. Mm-hmm. This tape that would play in my head in certain types of situations that boys don't cry. Why are you showing emotion? You're going to let that dude talk to you like that? We don't do that. These types of these narratives were repeating in my head, and I'd seen that wasn't my voice. That wasn't me. This was something that I picked up from somebody that I loved, I respected, and I cared about, and had set a pattern in myself that I carried forward many years into the future.
So did that mean that you learned not to accept how you feel, those feelings?
It did. So the non-acceptance came from many different ways, but like the non-acceptance and the not dealing with these powerful emotions was a coping tool in itself. Like they were, as a child, I was very, very emotional, and I was on like extremes, just in general. And so the more I picked up this trauma and not dealing with it, what we'd come to term is our emotional fuel tank started becoming fuller and fuller and fuller. Mm-hmm. And I would become angry and angry all the time, and I didn't know why. I remember there was an incident where a teacher, after I got into a particularly nasty fight at school, and why are you so angry, Casey? I don't know. I had no answer. I could not think of a reason. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that there was accumulation of incident after incident after incident that I'd been repressing and just bearing down, not having the vocabulary or the tools to talk about, or you know what I mean, just work through. I didn't have that skill set. I was never taught that. I was never, you know, I mean, it's okay for boys to be angry as long as it's in a certain setting, you know what I mean? And so that was another lesson to reinforce. So it's like, so when it came to sitting in the fire, I had this just immense ball of just powerful emotions that were just sitting with me for years. And what had happened, all the details of those had gone away. I lost sight. It was just raw emotions. And so I'd come to learn that, like, through the teachings of many things, but grip, and along the way, a lot of the Buddhists and other practices, that all emotions are valid and true. We're feeling these for a reason. They're there and they're to inform. And
So all the emotions are valid and true, is what you said?
yes,
Okay.
all of our emotions are there to inform, teach, and help us. It is through the indoctrination, the programming, cultural influences that we take in, that the narratives in our head where we develop guilt and shame patterns. This is wrong. This is acceptable. This is all the things that we get stuck in our head about. The emotions are not the problem. Those are that's the nature of being human.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to feel and have these experiences. Is when we get caught up in these dialogues that all this other stuff happens. And so
can you give an example of a dialogue inside that you, just a small?
Let me see. I'll do one since we're talking about violence. In belief systems, was that you don't back down. It is unmanly to back down.
Okay.
You accept all challenges, whatever that is. There's challenges in sports and challenges in life, whatever it is. Like,
okay.
If it means from the fist, it comes from the words, whatever it is. You whether you win or lose, you stand on that. And so I would have these tapes, and when I felt confronted, there was no other option. Those were the beliefs upon this window in which I viewed the world and interacted with it. And so I didn't realize any of this until much later. But to get to this point, I had to, in that fire, I had to learn to be able to sit and be with this backlog of intense emotions that were so overwhelming at times because I had not dealt with it. So I just accumulated this stuff. And so one of the things that it was the greatest gifts and hardest things I learned to do for myself. And like, this is something we all have to do alone and by ourselves. You have to be able to learn to sit, and this is why this is called sitting in the fire, is because this stuff has to be burnt out. There's no way around. There's only through, or you have to experience. All emotions have to be experienced. They have to be there. There is no deadening them. There's no there's no pushing away. There's no suppressing them. Those are false. Those aren't real, because the emotions are still there, and so they have to be felt. And so what happens is you have this backlog, and it comes out as a neurosis, irrational actions and behaviors, addictions, all kinds of things come out, and like patterns of behavior, because the emotions have to come out somewhere. And so they come out in destructive self patterns, protectors, coping tools, unhealthy things, like just the basic things we do that are destructive in our life. And self-destructive, because most of them are going to be negative. They will have some positive, safety mechanism to keep you safe, that wounded child in some way. They're there for a reason.
Yeah.
But they're just maladapted, ill-informed things that came about as a response to a trauma.
And yet you say you learn to accept them wholly.
Yes. So I had but it all comes back to being able to learn to sit in a space, disconnect the mind from the emotions, and just be present with them. So I learned I had an obsessive compulsive mind very, very early on. I realized that I would have a thought, and it would have a corresponding emotion, thought, emotion, and then this would go so quickly, it would move into a compulsory state for me. Mm-hmm. I would be in such an amped up state very quickly that I would be reactive. Mm-hmm. I'd just be doing what was happening. And so I had to learn to separate these minds and emotions and be able to just sit with them in the moment, and just, so this was a later practice. I had to learn to empty this fuel tank, to sit there. And it was the hardest thing that I have probably ever done in my life, was to sit there with all this pain, all this suffering, all of this guilt and shame and regret that I'd been carrying around for since I was little that I can remember. And so these are the very things that keep us bound in these destructive patterns. And so I started nibbling away at this. This is not something that happened overnight or very quickly. And I would sit sometimes for 5 minutes. I would go into my peaceful abiding. I would go into my practice, and I would come out so angry or so overwhelmingly sad, and I did this repeatedly, and then every so often it would get a little bit easier. I would sit there, and every time I was able to disassociate or put a little bit of distance from the mental chatter, so in the Siddha Yoga tradition, we call it becoming the watcher. We sit there, we watch the thoughts, and we don't associate them as us. We're just observing and we're present, and there's this, like, it's not a disassociation, but there's a measure of distance from it. There's a separation. I come to realize that crazy thoughts, but I am not those thoughts. I used to believe that those thoughts were me and there was no difference between them. So by learning that separation, it was able to like gain that little bit of distance and realize that one, I could see the patterns happening, and then I can like start, okay, there is something different there. There's something going on. And so what happens in the grip work is that not only are you learning this material, you're like sitting and going through this deep, you know what I mean, like fiery, like intense experience. You know, you're writing about it, so you're learning all these tools and avenues, and then you're in a sacred space, so to speak, with people that have experienced and done horrible things also, and had horrible things done to them. And so in the sharing and the writing about, and like this whole crucible of pain and suffering that is shared amongst you and other people, bonds are formed, collectives are seen, you know, and just, so I like to talk about we're all sharing each other's truths until the next man can speak his own. So like we all come from pain, suffering, and chaos in some way or form. This is the first noble truth. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like we all share that in common. And so like everybody does. This is what we all experience. We all come from trauma. We all come from, to be human, to live life is to be traumatized in one way or another.
Yes.
And so seeing that and hearing other people sharing similar experiences, it lessens that sense of aloneness, that sense of disconnect, and creates bonds in ways that like we hear about soldiers talk about their experience, yes, the fog of war and like guilt for survivors and all kinds of stuff. But one they always talk about is that deep sense of camaraderie and bonds. And so shared pain and trauma is something to bind through a shared experience. So the men have these shared experiences but having similarity, but they're also now going through another type of process together, which creates another type of bonding. And so it's really similar to what happens in our retreats. You know, individuals talk about deep, painful, powerful things. It's not all bad, some are good, you know what I mean? And so there's just hearing another person speak that and bearing witness to that creates a sense of familiarity, a sense of connectedness, a sense of bonds, you know what I mean? And we see each other not as the other, but as, you know what I mean, a reflection of ourselves, because we relate to that through the pain and the suffering that they're going through, because we have the same stuff. The details are just a little bit different. And so
it's kind of the love spreads.
Yeah. But really it comes down to the work we're willing to put in.
Yes.
And for me, and hearing the other man's story, sitting in that fire is one of the most difficult things an individual can do, because it means facing the things that you're terrified of, the things that lurk in the dark, that keep you bound in these patterns, but they're only scary in the dark when the light isn't turned on. And amor fati and love and these concepts that are in this material, that is the light shining in. You know what I mean? And Hemingway talks about we're all broken people, and that's how the light gets in. You know what I mean? But also that's how it gets out of us. You know what I mean? Like,
Others.
and so hurt people, but healed people also heal those around them. You know what I mean? And so what we call bad people or damaged people, these people are impactful. They affect everything around them, normally in very destructive and negative ways, but they're still impactful. And so when you heal them and you fix them, they're just as equally, if not more, impactful, because it comes with a sense of understanding and gratitude and deep sorrow for what understanding what you've done and what you've caused, because you see it from a different perspective.
To yourself as well as to another,
Say that
right?
again?
To yourself as well as to another.
Absolutely, because you can't love anything else if you don't love yourself. So Amor Fiate is about loving yourself. It's about loving, because your fate and yourself are tied intricately together. One is a manifestation of the other, back and forth. Like it feeds and nourishes the other. Your fate is your actions, but it's also your destiny manifest. You know what I mean? It's what we put out in the world and we create through our actions. But because we weren't taught to do this skillfully and in a manner that doesn't hurt everybody, we use this ability to manifest and create realities in very destructive ways.
It sounds like a great deal of your understanding and enlightenment came from self inquiry and the willingness to sit in the fire, and also from other people being willing to sit with you and you being willing to sit with them.
So there's a commitment here, because it is not easy to hear someone else's pain,
Right.
or to hear somebody else's um, wrongdoings, to sit and bear witness, and we are affected by the things that we hear, the things that we see, and to hear somebody crassly talk about and glorifying something they've done wrong is repugnant to us on a very deep level.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear somebody be honest, transparent, and owning what they've done, not abdicating their responsibility, not taking a victim stance, not any of those things that we intuitively, like we feel when those things are happening, and we know when it's bullshit. And so to be in the presence of that, and that vulnerability from someone that you've seen as an other or as a victimizer, to hold that space for them also is powerful, and it's
Sacred.
sacred, but it's that willingness to be there for somebody that has done wrong is transformative in itself. You know what I mean? Because the reality is we've all done wrong in some way or another. We've hurt somebody, we've wronged somebody, and just people like me have done it to more extreme levels. And so, but the more extreme you've done it and the more pain you've caused, the deeper the understanding sometimes comes, because you see the ripple effects in ways that you didn't understand, that you didn't anticipate, or you didn't even care to see, or you didn't have the mind to understand. And so that is one of the things that I sat and faced in my sitting in the fire process, was to see the ever-ending ripples from that go on to this day. Or people are affected in ways that will never stop because of one deed, one callous word, one malice intent. They go on, and this is why we talk about the karma. Takes two Buddhas or more to understand. Like we don't get it, but once you start sitting in that, you start seeing parts of that. It creates something inside you that you don't want to keep perpetuating. But you have to get to the point where you're willing to sit and look. And what I learned was that even though I have to do it alone, I don't have to be alone in the process. Mm-hmm. So I always used to believe that I had to do it alone, and it was wrong to burden others with my burdens. And I convinced myself that I could do it alone. But I come from a tribe of men that taught me, you do it alone. You do not burden others with your difficulties. And I've learned there is a balance between doing difficult and hard things and not robbing myself. So I convinced myself that, like, to ask for help meant robbing myself of the opportunity to overcome something difficult and hard.
Mhm.
And in a way, this is true. And so there must be an honest assessment of, do I truly need help? Or is this something that I can do alone? And then on top of that, if I love the people that I say that I love and I value them in my life, why not give them the opportunity to share their love and give me that very thing? I mean, that support and that love, like, which is still very difficult for me.
All of us.
But
We're learning.
it's a repeated thing. And so, like, I continuously,
Yeah. I can see.
Oh, the guy's back.
Okay.
He's gonna kick them out. Okay. So it's done.
This is our first in a series of learning to sit in the fire, and how do we develop a tribe that we trust and that we give each other the gifts of being with when we hurt and when we are confused. It sounds like you've learned to do that.
yes, I believe we have learned to do that. And we are enacting it even in this moment
Yes.
by choosing to show up, but do more than show up. Everyone here is of exceptional quality, but also has been equally traumatized and hurt, and
Yes.
life has been cruel to in many ways. Like, we all carry that, and so we all share that same kind of pain in one way or another. And I've met many people in my life, and I used to think there wasn't much of me out there like that, much of this, whatever I am. There didn't seem to be much of that reflected around me until I came here. And I see aspects of myself all around me in each of you. And I learn and I grow through my interactions. And I talked about this at one of the last retreats, is that by myself, I am my most authentic and true version of me. True, but when I'm with you guys, I get to be my best version because I love and I care about you, and I don't want to bring harm to that, and I don't want to dishonor or disrespect that. And so I think both are necessary, being authentic and true, but also having the space that allows us to be our best selves, or at least bring parts of that to the table and give that, because by myself, I'm a wild animal, I'm having fun, I delight in just being me, but that doesn't really give anything back. It doesn't mend or fix or leave anything behind for the next one. what is gained by hedonism. He says more fun, which is not a bad thing, but I know that's not why I'm here. As much as I would like to believe that you know, we're all here for service of one form or another. And I'm slowly finding my way to be of service.
It's the connection. Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll open it to everybody. Comments.
I've got a question, Casey. In meeting once a month in this GRIP program, one of the things that I'm sure, when you are sharing what you have done with another, and another has shared what they did with you, it is information that generally you have never shared with another being inside, because there is the element of trust, and the violation of that trust can cause great harm. And yet there's probably instances where that violation of the trust happens. How is that trust rebuilt? If it can be rebuilt.
So really what we're talking about is another trauma.
Can you speak that way? So
what we're really talking about is a violation of vulnerability, of sanctity, of another form of traumatizing. You know what I mean? That right there has to be seen, it has to be met, and it cannot be like, but it has to be met with compassion also. So like when it does happen, and it does happen, but it doesn't happen as much as you think it would. There is a process, a force, a guiding spirit, whatever you want to call it. Like when sincere and wholehearted people get together, whether of broken intent or like whatever that is, that we talk about it as our bodhisattva nature, or that aspect of ourself. And I believe like when that comes together, that field or that presence like amplifies and like helps mitigate and also like temper some of the things that happen. It brings out. So for me, I look at it as when they do happen, these things that happen, there are venues and avenues and experiences for people to learn and grow and work on more stuff. To look at it was like, okay, this is happening, it hurts, it's painful, I feel violated, I feel all these things. My original way was to lash out, to take back my power and control. Okay, so I learned that anger is a secondary emotion. What I'm really feeling is all these other things underneath it. And so the one thing I could not give to somebody before that was understanding, to seeing that they're violating me, or in this, whatever this violation is, because they're equally hurt and damaged and they're going through something. And so this is their way of taking back power also. And so instead of looking at it from the victim stance, like, oh, poor me, whoa, it took a shift in perspective to be like, okay, so one, I've done that. I've been the offender, I've been the violator. And so it made me softer in that sense by having had this experience. So it's like, and then I'd seen what forgiveness does to a person that has violated in that sense. Like, because I know, like, to have received a measure of acceptance and forgiveness had a transformative effect on me. And I know that if I would have been capable of honoring that and giving that to someone else, the person's life that I stole, Austin, would still be here. So for me, being able to offer that to somebody else is my way of honoring his loss. So for me, like to it's not, don't get me wrong, it's still difficult when violations happen, but I always fall back on that. Who am I to judge somebody? Who am I to like deny them that again? Like, and I know, like I said, I've received forgiveness, and I know that it has instilled in me a desire to be better, to want to be better, that if done correctly and integrated in a way, it makes that person better. Because if we look at it and we see it from a perspective of pain and suffering and lashing out, and we come around and insulate, not with intent to hurt or like an eye for an eye, but to love and to, there is something transformative in that for all parties involved.
Does just to follow up, does the reconciliation of it happen back in the safety of the group, of the GRIP group, and happen
It can happen
out in the yard?
It can, absolutely. And so like in that world, it's a world of violence. Violence is currency, violence is everything, fear, intimidation, all those things. So in this world, to offer forgiveness and to do these things is like a very antinomian practice.
Mhm.
You're doing something that is against the culture that is, and so this very process affects everything around it and affects the individuals because they're breaking the codes and the things that are happening, and so that affects everybody around them because there's already bonds and subtle patterns and things that are happening. So the more developed and the more solid in the change process mirror the way of doing the next right thing in a way. Like they're the parent mirroring the correct behavior to the child in some ways. You know what I mean? If we look at it from that perspective, it's like, but on a spiritual level, there's this interconnectedness. And so like it always found me profound when I seen those commercials about human kindness, that one person did one small act and another person seen it and it was contagious and it moved forward and it made the other person want to do like, and I remember experiencing that in myself. I remember seeing someone do a kind act and it was like I felt motivated, compelled, like something inside me to do that, to offer that to somebody else.
So the antithetical circumstance maybe happens in a yard, and that antithetical expression actually ripples
It does.
and changes just the body politic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I know for a fact it does because I'd been on yards that were the most violentest ones in California and been a part of that change process. I mean, like, so I know it works. I've seen it work. I've been a part of it working. I've changed cultures and yards from the most scariest places to be to places where men go to college.
Thank you, Casey.
But it's not me. It's grace. It's not me that's doing this. You know what I mean? It's a willingness to work with things beyond me. Willingness to own my responsibility, my part and stuff that makes it possible.
I wanted to get back to that. It sounds to me that that's the core that you get back to, the willingness to hold responsibility.
It's not easy.
It's not easy at all.
It's not easy,
To
yeah.
sit in the truth of responsibility.
I mean, because it means being absolutely vulnerable. It means
Yeah.
risking alienation. It means risking everything. Yeah, I'm in the wrong here. But it also means if I'm owning it, I have to fix it.
Yeah.
There now has to be change in behavior modification. There has to be all these things that have to come with it. So there's tremendous fear in that comes with it. So it's like, and the minutes to something means nothing if it's not followed by action.
Right.
An apology means nothing
Nothing.
unless there's behavioral change behind it.
it can only come from within, not from a dictator. Aubrey?
Hi, Casey. Hi, Lana.
Hi, Aubrey.
So, as you know, I work with vets. I work with a lot of Marines, and
Aubrey, 1 second. We want to increase the volume.
yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Okay. So I'll repeat that. I work with vets. I work with a lot of Marines. I work with people, right, who have had terrible, terrible childhoods and went on to be honed in the military to feel more anger and less of anything else. And it's interesting hearing you talk about that you wanted to go into the Marines, like it made sense to you in that earlier time. And I'm just thinking about how maybe if you had, there would have been perhaps a lot of violence and no space to be civilly disobedient through forgiveness. Like there's no room to do that. And so you were able to be somewhere to make a change for people who have suffered deeply. Yeah.
I know what I would have become had I been a Marine. It would not have been pretty. It would have been a finer honing of what was inside of me. I know what it did to my father. I know what it did to my stepfather. I know what it did to the men that raised me. And my father went to his grave irreparably damaged. He was never able to fix himself or be fixed. And so I've been offered the opportunity, and I hate to say this, and it feels dirty to my mouth even to say it, but prison saved me. It made me a better person. But it also damaged me in a lot of ways also. But they talk about God is dead everywhere except for in prisons. I mean, like really, like the real principle of divinity, like they say it in jest because, and it is not true that that's the only place it is at, but because it is a world of extremes, that's where you find some of the most beautifulest, atrocious, intellectualist, like everything there is there in such a concentrated dose, and that environment brings equally powerful things into existence. And I think if God is going to go anywhere, why not where there's an environment that's powerful and intense as he has, or at least some form of that to it in relation that's got to be in residence with them. You know what I mean? Like resident. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
You're in residence with him there. Yeah.
Thank you, Aubrey. That's a good question. I want to, it's hard not to reflect on what you just said. And I am, having been in prison now a few times, I recognize that I live inside of myself. In my non-awareness, I live in prison. And in my non-awareness, there are all kinds of ghosts. And most of them are demonic and pretty harmful. And it takes a tremendous amount of fire to create a community with these ghosts and these demons. and to accept them as equal members of my awareness.
Understanding those aspects of ourselves, I think that's where many of the programs out there fail, because there is no acceptance of. It's always a subjugation, a annihilation of parts of ourselves that instead of seeing them as parts of ourselves that don't need to be eradicated, that just need to be accepted, loved, and reintegrated back in, because they serve a function. They are us.
Yes.
They are parts of us. They came out of us, and they're not trash. They're not something that needs to be eradicated. They're something that needs to be accepted, loved, and brought back into that part of ourself and reintegrated and become, because that's where we're not whole unless we do that. There is dark as there is light. We are a combination of all these things, and this fear of our dark side and this parts of ourself is damaging, because we're not integrated, we're not whole. We're ashamed of our anger, we're ashamed of our thirst for violence, our need for retribution, the laws of reciprocation, and all these other things that we are animalistic in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? We have reptilian brains. We have a need to, you know what I mean, form tribal bonds that have no regard for anybody else, but those within the collective whole. Like, by not acknowledging these aspects of ourself is where these neuroses come out of. But they can be equally a beneficial part of who and what we are. You know?
If we learn to love them.
Yeah. The broken, hurt person lashes out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your part of yourself that's lashing out. So love that part of it. Accept it. Make it a part of you again.
Also, the truth that you are trying to avoid by being angry. So what's underneath the lashing out is always the truth that doesn't want to be seen.
Sherry.
Yes. Boy, Casey, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. What we're just talking about, it reminds me of, I think it was Saint Teresa who called herself a wretch. And I think it wasn't low self-esteem. I think it was really that embracing those monstrous, demonic parts of ourselves. And it always makes me think of that song, Amazing Grace.
Yes.
Forgiving a wretch like me. And it's not low self-esteem. This is really accepting all of those pieces that you were just talking about. So thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Not all monsters are bad.
Not all.
Monsters Inc. proved that to us.
They all have a good message. They all have a message too, right? It's just like the anger. We all kind of put down and avoid it, but there's such wisdom and there's a message there if we can listen to it.
This is what GRIP offers us. You know what I mean? Whether you look, just looking at the book, the exposure to concepts, seeing things in a different light, like this material is the most succinct, condensing, and so I work with stuff and principles and all like different stuff through my time, and a lot of times I felt demeaned or talked down to through the material, or made to feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, or what I'm feeling is invalid, or this is wrong. There was always a demeaning quality in a lot of the stuff, like that there was something that needed to be eradicated or fixed in me, like there was something inherently wrong with me that I needed. That this stuff takes a different perspective. You know what I mean? It's very Buddhist in a lot of ways. It's very different. And so I feel lucky that to offer it, like, and hopefully anybody that wants to be a part of this with me, because I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm going to go back through the whole thing again, because anything you do often, you become well at it. You become very good at it. So why not do something that is truly effective?
So I don't know if we actually mentioned that GRIP is an acronym guiding
rage into power.
So the important word is guiding, right?
Mhm.
So it's guiding. And something I'm very emotional about this because, as Casey was just saying, you know, most accepted therapy is about fixing something. You're depressed, let's make you not depressed. You're having a thought of worthlessness, let's change how you think. Uh, and this idea of accepting all the pieces and guiding the anger into love, to me, I just can't imagine what it would be like for people to show up in the room and instead of feeling alone in the therapy room, to feel that all their ancestors are there, all the families there, all the friends are there, just wishing wellness and forgiveness for them. It just melts my heart to think that way.
And it's not like we're already not doing that.
Yeah.
The song is already offering that to everybody here.
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer that very gift has been offered to me. You know what I mean? And so I've been accepted, I've been loved, I've been listened to, I've been forgiven, I've been all these things, you know what I mean, in one way or another, you know what I mean? So it's not like this is something we're not already doing. It's just another way of doing it more effectively. You know what I mean? Why reinvent the wheel if it's already there? You know what I mean? Why not look at it and see, is it something that you're interested in? And why not do it with people that are awesome? Not me, I mean, but you know.
And you.
But fun things are always done better with company. You know what I mean? So like, it's not a party unless there's 10 of us.
Okay, Brady.
That's a good day out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the talk. Yeah, let me echo. Thinking all that voice. So, you said that prison saved you. What was it? What was your kind of like the most kind of what was the most obvious point at which prison helped you? What was that?
Probably, there are so many things that I could say that have been astounding beyond words, but I could say the one thing that prison really offered me outside of education in all its variant forms, but was an environment that contained what I was, that allowed the working through of darkness, pain, and violence and things where it did not inflict upon innocent, undeserving people. It contained what I was and allowed me a space to burn that out. A chance to be more than I was destined to be. A chance to ride around my fate. To be more than what they said I was supposed to be. That's what it offered me. In its most truest form. It taught me that there are no dark clouds. There are only silver linings, and there is direction and purpose in all things. We just have to look.
So the acronym Guiding Rage into, which you've given us a marvelous introduction to, is a manual that Casey shared with me some months ago, and I read through it 3 times. There's an enormous amount of instruction, applicable, usable guidance, and how to deal with one of the particular emotions that occurs in us. So there would be another manual on guiding shame into, guiding blaming into, guiding the rest of the negative, unuseful emotions that are a function of inadequate childhood instruction. All of us understand that. There are some who have received it, but in the Buddhist way, it talks about skillful means. And as Casey, you were speaking about, no one had instructed you on sitting. It's not as simple as it sounds, even when called just sitting.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a lot of guidance that can be given about sitting and making it useful as practice. And in the manual of Guiding Rage into Power, there are excellent short instructions. I don't know if other people have had it, but I've gotten manuals on things that are very complicated. I open it up, I start to read it, and I say, no way, I'm not bothering.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just try turning it on and turning it upside down, see if it works, or I'll just grab all this IKEA furniture and I'll just see if you have to do it step by step in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
You need guidance. And it's helpful to have clear instruction. And I'm very grateful for Casey's internal work and bringing to us what I think is kind of our first introduction to a real good guidance set, and really fills the criterion of skillful means. There are very clear skillful means that work, because we all have this stuff done to us as children when we have no power, no agency, and some fare worse than others, given their causes and conditions, the family they grew up in, the time, the place, the culture, the religion. So if we, as a Sangha, are working together to help each other to evolve skillful means and becoming fully realized beings, Buddhas who are the manifestation of love and the wishing well for all beings, that's what happens at that point. It really becomes embodied, and that's what you breathe, eat, sleep, and dream. So I just want to thank Casey again and Alana again for kind of bringing this into the Sangha and bringing in the concept of guiding. And as we all work here together, we are guiding each other, and we come together to experience the guidance that each other can contribute. And it really is because we're all on this raft. That's really where we are. And someone might say, it would be helpful for 2 of you to go over there. Looks like there's a wave coming from there. Hold that corner of the raft down. The question of why are moments of joy so fleeting, and why do negative emotions feel so real? This is worth inquiry. Why is that so for human beings? What does that process tell us? And to explore that. And we have a great strength in being able to do it as a Sangha. I bow to the Sangha.
Casey, thank you so much on so many levels. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm in awe of the amount of work that you've done, and I'm so deeply grateful that you found us, and that we found you. I'm sitting with also intimidation. You know, I mean, Casey actually was in a prison, but I feel that perhaps that each of us has our own version. The difference being, well, I don't know the difference, but it's easy to avoid. It's easy to avoid the things that could really serve us in the next level of growth. You know, and yeah, I mean, it's intimidating to know that there's probably stuff that, I mean, if I go to my grave without ever dealing with it, would anybody be any the wiser except me? So I'm just kind of present to that. And I'm what Frank just said about why is it that, all of the harder emotions are so much louder than the more pleasant ones. It's a very curious notion. I hadn't ever really kind of viewed it that way, but it's that really, struck me. It's like, yeah, why is that? That's really true. Why is that? Anyway, so thank you, Casey.
So I've sat, I think I just turned 18 or 19 with the enormity of the trajectory of my life sentence where I was not supposed to get out. And I remember, and then time went on, and I remember sitting at another point where the possibility of getting out was very, very dim. The mountain of work that I knew that it was going to take was that very emotional, like that you're talking about, was so overwhelming and so soul crushing. Why even worth it? Why even step into that? Like, I can raise to my top in here. I could be a monster like no other, and never have to deal with any of that. Growth doesn't always come in good ways. I mean, I could have grown into many other things, but I remember sitting there and I remember thinking, how do I do this? How do I face something so big and so enormous and so overwhelmingly soul crushing? Because I've been facing, and I didn't even have a full conception of what that meant. Like, I had no idea until I really started stepping on the path, and I had this very moment of what you're talking about many times. And this is where Sangha is the most important. That how do you eat an elephant?
Mm-hmm.
One bite at a time. But the reality is you show up, you do what you're capable of in the moment, what you're capable in that day. You're not expected to eat the whole elephant in one sitting, or even one lifetime. Like the reality is once you make a little bit of progress, it accelerates. It becomes easier. It becomes funner, and then it becomes shittier, and then it becomes easier again, and then it's like it's a weird roller coaster. But what happens is like you turn into it, and like I assure you in prison that there is equally as many things to run away from this shit. Like it just because I was in prison didn't mean I couldn't have found all other kinds of distractions. Mm-hmm. So like environment is not necessarily, the end all be all to getting to where you need to be. Like, it's scary. But like I said, this is where the group, the Sangha, and the love and the understanding, and having had a taste of that, like, of what that, once you get a little bit of that and you see it, that ability to sit and endure a little bit more becomes easier the next time, because it's not going to be done wholly alone. There's going to be some kind of acceptance, and like there's that when you, and then you got to start with the biggest thing. Like, and you're even gonna do the biggest thing, like you move at the paces that's comfortable, and because like part of your soul knows the speed and pace, and then you have the group as part of the accountability partners. They're not here to like goad you, but they're also here to support you and gently like nudge. Alana does it all the time. Or you think I want to go back to school? You know, like, you think I want to meditate, Doug? But the reality is like, it's not done. And so that is what the Sangha does for us. You know what I mean? We want to be better for the people we love, the people that's just innately what we are. And everybody here, I sat down and I thought about when I first met everybody, and I started thinking about like what I knew about them, what I seen about them, and I honestly believe that we've all been brought together because we are impactful, powerful. We affect many lives around us in so many ways. Like the ripple effects that we create are beyond
Imagination.
but just the sheer volume of people that each of you interact with in so many different ways, like, and have interacted with and touched people's life. Like, you know, so that alone is powerful. And now you bring a group of people that are already powerful in the sense of like, they're charismatic, they have, you know what I mean, eloquence, they have talents, they're likable, they're all these things, they're quirky, they're weird, they're all these interesting. And then now you start smoothing the edges a little bit. You change the world. Smoothing the edges of the ones that are powerful. But also not motivated by greed, want, and all those other strange things. And I don't
It's
feel
really
that
not about fixing.
true.
It's really about growing, which is how you began the answer.
Mhm.
You know, and growth always, always, always feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So cozy is not growth. Anybody else? No. Chris?
Make sure I'm not on mute. Thanks, Casey. That was a really interesting and powerful insight into your process of, I guess, facing your demons. That's something we all have to go through, I guess, if we're going to grow. And it's not easy. It can be really difficult. And I think it's one of the things that when you were talking about God in the prisons, it made me think of that old saying that prayer is the last refuge of the scoundrel. And we all have that scoundrel in us that's done things that we're not proud of and we don't want to face and we don't want to look at, and just bury it and throw away the key. But it's going to keep sneaking up behind us and nagging us if we do it that way. So the other thing that I thought was really powerful about the program that you mentioned is, I don't know if it's part of the program or your interpretation of it, but basically you started to see others and the process that others were going through as an aspect of yourself. And I think that's a really powerful way of looking at things, that everybody that's around you, and no matter what state of consciousness they're at or how far along they've gone towards exploring and accepting their own shortcomings, is there for a reason, and you can see yourself in them. And I know in the prison, I see that, you know, I know almost everybody in the prison has done bad things in the past, but I also have a feeling that they're still working on some bad stuff today, right? But there's also this positive thing. You know, they want to grow. They don't know how to actually yet. They're trying to get their footing on that, and having trouble atoning for the past, and dealing with their ongoing demons. And by accepting that kind of thing in myself and those those contradictions in myself, I can just choose to support the side that's trying to grow and try to become more conscious, and I guess overlook the other stuff. I'm aware of it. I would be cautious of it maybe if it's appropriate, but that negative aside. But for the most part, I'm just think it's important just to support one another and encourage one another to become more self-accepting and just, okay, we screw up sometimes, and love ourselves for becoming aware of it and trying to become more aware of that. I think that's really important. The other thing about the program, it sounds like a lot of it depends on introspection, and just, you mentioned several times, of just feeling what you're feeling, no matter what it is, and just working through it and accepting that. And I was just wondering what they feel about antidepressants and other psych meds that might suppress that. And is that something they discourage, or is that something that
No, and so it's accepted if that's part of, because we know that there are brain imbalances, there are things that happen in the neurobiology and the chemistry of a person. So they recognize that we are physical beings, we are spiritual beings, we're intellectual beings, and those needs are definitely taken into account. But they also understand that some of that stuff is misdiagnosed or handled improperly. So they're not absolute on anything, except for like, people deserve that environment, that safety, that love. The other details they're willing to look at and assess on a case-by-case basis, from my experience.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your talk. That was great. I'd like to find out more about that.
Absolutely.
You will.
Charles.
Charles.
First, thanks very much, Casey. That was eye-opening, to say the least, and I appreciate your coming and sharing with us. A question I don't have that much to say with respect to guiding rage. The question I have for you is, it's an ongoing process, it seems, of taking this energy and guiding it for more productive means, into power and other such things, love, what have you. And the question I have for you is, do you attempt to work to analyze what is fomenting, what is causing this rage in the first place? And have you yourself done that, and have you made any progress? In other words, is it possible for people working with this concept to begin to understand the rage in a way that it no longer is the volcano that it has become? In other words, is there a way to quell this? And I don't know, and I'm just asking you personally, and from what you've seen, how is that type of a concept approached?
So, yes, I'm a firm believer, and through personal experience, that yes, it's not only is it possible and doable, it's doable in that moment. So, one, we know that like rage is the final product of stuff that happened way preceding that. With a lot of times in the very roots of childhood experiences, but also just a buildup of stuff, like, you know what I mean? So what the course teaches is one, emotional intelligence right off the gate. So you're learning, okay, so when we talk about what, very few people know what they're feeling in any given moment. They don't do it like, so a lot of the time psychologists and clinicians do a feeling check-in, but it's deeper than that. Like, what is my body informing? As Buddhists, we know, like, we sit down, we look at our body, we look at our breath, we know that informs us in a lot of things. So we start with emotional intelligence, physiological intelligence, you know what I mean? And just becoming conscious and aware. And we also know, as intelligent beings, if we understand and look at things and analyze it and see the totality of all the intricate parts, we can now get a better understanding of what's happening. And so this material, through introspection, writing, conversing, talking, all these things that we do in our science fields are, all those things are applied within this. So it's not like, and then on top of that, it gives you day-to-day like tools and technologies, so to speak, that you can use in any given moment. Mnemonic techniques, breath techniques, CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy things. We know, like, so there is a lot of like other things that went into the formation of this that we know produce results. So it took the best of a lot of different things, from spiritual, science, Native American, all these different areas, and they pulled it all together and like kind of created this cohesive whole. So they took the best of everything we know that works, and they made it understandable and practical in a day-to-day, moment-by-moment setting. And so we know that, like I said, if we understand how something works, we can now augment it or fix it or do something. So if you understand the baseline theory of something, that's why we teach the theory of stuff, so that in something, in the field or whatever, you can now understand, okay, hey, I can problem solve this, or I can troubleshoot that, or like, so by understanding that principle, you can fix whatever's going on. You know what I mean? You can like look at guide, like, I should change that word, absolutely, you're correct. Guide that. And it's not about like gaining power. This isn't about like power and control, and I need to put myself above somebody else, and it's so that the conception of that is misguided. So we want to also change how we conceptualize power. Also, it's not a trauma response. We're not trying to take something back. We're trying to like I look at it as in the sense of empowering. You know what I mean? You're giving somebody back their voice, their ability to be who they were always supposed to be. You know what I mean? To be their authentic whole self. And so looking at it from that perspective and knowing that and seeing that process through myself, and also in amongst other men, I have no doubt I wouldn't back something or even share something that I didn't feel was effective for everybody. Not just a few.
Let me just stop you for a second here. I think I understand what you're saying in context of what you had said earlier. I think I'm sort of getting at something slightly different. And in other words, you have developed all of these tools and a type of a methodology to deal with the rage and the discomfort and this lava that basically is flowing up through the volcano, spewing into the air. And it sounds like that you've done really well, in the sense that you've been able to employ a variety of methods to transform. And the question that I'm asking is more along the lines of, does this process for you, has it in any way, shape, or form subdued this interactivity, so that, does that make sense to you?
So first off, I did not create these techniques.
No, I realize that, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not taking credit for any of that. Like, I'm lucky to have come across them and maybe like intuitively started doing some of them. But yeah, to what you're saying, subdue is the wrong word. It's more of a channeling. So these are parts of myself, and I think that's what you're driving at. Is like,
So I'll give you an example, Charles. Let's take the example, like you said, rage. So what Casey was talking about earlier is you take your time with this and you begin to understand the nature of rage, the energy. You begin to understand the aspects, of rage, the characteristics of rage, and to soften with time. You begin to soften into the energy, and you become intimate with the energy to the point where you can begin to see, this is how it manifests, this is how it shows up. Now, the program that Casey is talking about begins with the building of community. That's the first step. You are a member of a tribe. The name of our tribe is this. These are the guidelines that govern us. So this is the first building block. Now, when I begin to process and see the energy in myself, and I begin to see, and Casey talked about it, the energy in Casey, an amazing thing happens. Empathy happens. So instead of being judgmental, what an asshole, which I otherwise would have been, first of all, he's my brother now. Secondly, I know that I have that energy myself. So my inclination is this, not this. And so a love, remember I said time is a very big factor here. A love begins to flourish between us. Now, that love allows Casey to become what I call my true friend. He can take his arm, put it on my shoulder and say, Ilana, I have something to tell you that I see is a pattern in you. Tell me if that's okay with you. Now, not a lot of friends do that to each other because they usually will get smacked in the face. Maybe not, but maybe a few days or weeks later. And it always happens. So somebody in that relationship that knows that ahead of time asks for permission and takes their time with it. And so that's how the love continues to grow.
And I want to stress, this isn't just about rage. This was a
Right.
convenient vehicle in which to get a platform, because rage is the least of the problem. Like, the reality is there are toxic manifestations and extremes in this environment. We all have them in one form or another. So it could be rage, it can be jealousy, it could be envy, it could be any of those, like any powerful emotion that's detrimental to your interactions with people. It could be self-loathing, it could be any of these fit this. So this paradigm, this model, which you take out one word and you can place in another. That's the beauty of what this program is. It's a structure upon which it works for all these neuroses, all these other patterns of behavior. Like, it's universal in the sense of, like, it works with almost all of them because it's in.
You have go ahead. Sorry, you have temporarily locked up. You're okay, you're back.
The signals.
The signal.
Oh.
Oh, I
okay.
think he lost us.
Yeah. What does it say?
Let me just ask one more question. Okay. Have you found that your work and your process through, I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I'm first of all, I have to just tell you up front here that I think it's wonderful that you've been able to do this. Okay. And it's heartwarming to me to see that somebody has found a way to channel energy into more appropriate vehicles or whatever you want to call it for yourself. I think that's amazing. During the process of doing this, not only has it made you feel a little better, or has it made you feel a little bit better, or that's not the right, no, let me rephrase that. Have you found that the energy becomes more manageable? In other words, has it in any way, shape, or form subdued itself from your work in this particular area? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, so I didn't have, so I equate it to this way. I didn't have a tolerance for beer, alcohol, drugs, any of those things. I had to develop a tolerance, an ability to withstand certain things. So I didn't have the ability to sit with my emotions because they were so overwhelmingly powerful. They were just powerful, like grabbing live wires, and it would electrocute me. It was like, so by sitting in the fire, I was able to, okay, I can sit in this, I can sit in this, I can take a little bit more, and then it became, this isn't a problem. I'm an intense person. I can
No,
that.
no.
I can do these things. So like so it's not about it's about like working with transmuting. It's like chi, you move it, you do things like it's energy work, and it's like all the things that you've talked about in a lot of ways. Also, it's just a different way of talking about it. It's the fuzzy stuff we see in between the stuff. You start to play with it and you can move it. Like you get an ability to interact with it. It's the same with our emotions. There are like, it's just energy.
That's
And
totally awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Aubrey, did you have something to say?
Oh, I don't think I can say anything
No, you put your hand up. I thought, I'm sorry.
better than what Casey already explained, but like it's not to subdue, like to subduing is like a very short term like mitigation strategy that you might do in the moment so that you don't hurt someone or yourself, but like to subdue is exactly like what all this work is sorry. Subduing doesn't work. Subduing is a thing that is designed to fail because we are strong in our spirits, and if we want to just subdue, we could just isolate or do a lot of drugs and wither away. But
That works. That works.
this is like developing a new system to transmute, like you said. Yeah.
Frank?
Just a quick metaphor. Imagine a really big fire hose, and if you don't know how to hold it, it's going to writhe around and kill people in the vicinity. But if you know how to hold it and guide it, you can put out fires that are threatening others. It's the same energy flow, but you learn how to guide it.
That's what it's guide.
Nick?
John.
Uh,
I think that
yes, I want to say thank you very much, Casey, for that excellent talk. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing more your process. I'd like to hear even more, about, sounds like you had a very different relationship with practice at the beginning and then as opposed to now. So I'm really impressed to hear about how that actually transformed for you. I guess I'm wondering your perspective on like, there's like some like notions in spirituality of like achieving enlightenment, where like we have some like big breakthrough and then like we have some perfect understanding and everything is just like perfect for us and all our bad karma goes away or whatever. It's just always just so easy now because we got this big enlightenment thing or something. But it didn't happen for me. It hasn't happened for me. And so I'm kind of wondering about like how do we find like peace, or how do we find, I mean, the word that kind of came to me was like, how do we find like self-love in the middle of our process, where like we know, I mean, I still, as you're presenting this, I'm kind of thinking is like, yeah, like I do have rage, I can relate to that. And I guess that's something I want to, maybe I would like to study this book to look into how my own experience relates to what they're teaching. But like in the middle of this process, like how do we find kind of like peace or okayness, or what's your perspective on that? Like
sometimes there is no peace. Sometimes the process is just sitting with it. And I think for me that there is a point where like life is uncomfortable, life sucks at times, it hurts, it's painful, and you sit with it, and it changes. Like it turns like I remember I would sit in my meditations, and they were horrible. I'd come out of it worse. I would be more angry than anything. I just didn't help. What am I gonna do? Like just, and so I just, okay, consistency. That's why we talk about the consistency in the practice, and then we talk about, and so where the practice lacks some of so when you're experiencing this, what do you do? Like there has to be other avenues, and so this is where the collective wisdom of the Sangha or the group, or you know what I mean, your community, whatever that is, or the teacher, whoever, like whatever master, like person, we have those in our life, those guiding lights. You know what I mean? And so like I was lucky to, you know what I mean, discover some for myself, to be given those from other people, and a measure of grace. Like, but those were never talked about. Those were never taught me. And so like there were deficiencies in my process, and it took time to learn those. And so like, but I remember going to a talk, and it was about, not about looking for happiness, but finding peace. What you're talking about there is peace is independent of the ebbs and flows of what is. It's about finding the equanimity, that process, that center, and from which we see, because like happiness is way different than peace. And so peace is just an acceptance of, and turning in this, the mora fiat that I spoke about in the beginning. It's this, by loving yourself, understanding and becoming one with like that center, your fate, because they're not different. And so there's like a healing acceptance thing that happens in dealing with these original pain moments, letting go, these little knots that happen from these traumas. They just kind of like, and then that's where the peace comes in. So you release something that's been just festering inside of you, and then it's like, oh, what was all the fuss about?
So there is a what he's talking about can sometimes be called surrender. So it's not a linear process. Surrender is an organic process. I know you know, Nick, and you and I talked about it. That it's kind of another word might be a letting go. It's not relaxing into the pain. It's not analyzing the pain. It's delving and diving into the pain, and then the peace comes immediately. And it doesn't happen once, to your point of enlightenment. It's enough that it should happen once, really, for a fraction of a second. And then you know, aha. And so it's not a striving, but it's a being. John, thank you, Nick. It's a great question. We were, Nick, to your comment, we're trying to organize a framework for us to do some of this work together. Yeah, maybe we'll do a longer retreat. Something, we will figure it out.
And I don't see why we can't like present the material if
Yeah.
they want to do, like, just to see if it's something they're even interested in. Like
Right.
this is going to be available, so like
Yeah.
it's not like something that we're going to order. I want to make this available to anybody, and then they can see what works for them. They can apply it in their daily life. They can apply it in smaller collectives. It's not something that it's mine. It's something that's all of ours here.
John,
That's
did
pretty.
you? Thank you, Nick.
Nick's the teacher. Well, sensei.
Sensei.
Thank you so much, Casey. And I grew up in such a loving family. My parents, my sister, and my oldest brother. Although my 3-year older brother was violent with me, he slugged my leg a lot, and I ended up with a huge scar on that leg. And he was tough on me. And when I was in 8th grade, I think I've shared this before, walking down the hallway in the school, a guy would come up behind me and slug me in the back so hard. And it was horrible. And he did it like 10 times. And my PE teacher eventually said, "John, you can do something about that." And so I found this guy in the locker room, and I had so much anger and rage, and I punched him in the face. And he was out for 3 days, and he came back with a big black eye, and he never harmed me ever again. I was able to use that once or twice again. When somebody would punch me, I would defend myself. But I ended up growing up with so much love in my school friends, my work friends, the body of the group Rachel and I met in Hong Kong, and all the people I work with all over the world. I just felt so much love back and forth, and that has become my life.
Joachim, is there something you wanted to say?
You're silent.
Check your.
He's muted.
Check.
He knows.
Sorry. No, actually, I didn't want to say anything at all because I read something from Kobun about being silent, and but on the other hand, as someone who didn't have a family, who grew up with this and that, and still happy in life and enjoying life, I had my own thing to do, especially being in the moment. This was my thing. And actually, I just wanted, Casey, I wanted to thank you for what you are doing, because as Vanya Palmer just said, the one thing, my motto in life is, I want to be happy, so I do anything for other people to be happy, to my environment, to the animals, and to do something for others, then I'll be happy. And this is my motto, he said. I was watching a video of him, and I think you, Casey, I think what you told us, it was so wonderful, and I wish you all the luck and strength to do whatever you want to do. And well, this was. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Joachim, thank you.
Charles.
I was really fascinated with your questions to Casey about what happens with this energy. Is it subdued, or has it made something better? And what came up for me is I went through a Fisher-Hoffman process, a 13-week group process in 1990. And I have a lot of things to be mad about in my life, but I wasn't very clear on what to do with it. And we did some anger work. We were 45 people, and for whatever reason, the 5 or 7 facilitators chose me to go first. And I nearly ran out of the room. I was so scared. They had no idea what they were getting into. And my imagination was, if you take that top off of that garbage can, you are all going to get harmed, because Tasmanian devil is going to come out of me and be something unhuman, and it's going to ruin everything. And so I was kind of like, no, 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 you don't know, you don't want me. No, 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 don't do that, don't do that. And they were very insistent, and they were very sure and confident and present. And I said, okay, whatever, here we go. And they guided me through a practice of using a bat and a pillow and really letting rage run through my physical being. And boy, did I have a lot of it. But the very first few moments, I created a scream that was probably higher than a hyena that just went energetically out the top of my head to this flame of panic. And they said, no, 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 no. Let's like where's your voice? Like, get your lungs. Like, where's your belly? Like, they helped me bring this spazzy energy down into my body, grounding my feet, bending my knees, using my physical body strength. I was half my weight now and a very strong athlete, and I could apply it if I focused. And they said, we want to hear you make deep sounds, not this, I am so upset about it, you know. It was like, no, where's the that kind of energy. And letting them guide me to that form showed me a power I had never known. It was not about wrecking things or harming everybody and going out into a turmoil that I had to keep clamped down. And after 45 minutes of spending all my physical energy screaming in a really deep, dark tone, whatever it was, I no longer wanted to keep inside me. Not only was the whole group enchanted and like the whole thing's very compelling. It's scary to some people because it can be loud, but I could own a part of me I had never known. Never known. I had never identified with having power, ever. I was only at the whim of other people taking rage out on me. And so I got to live and identify that this is not about harming people. This is about having power in my own being. And it's not to wreck something. It's not to hurt somebody. It's to, like, I came out of that process with, oh yeah, I might have this garbage can full of crap of what I've been through, but I can actually pick it up and look at it. I can address it. I can work with it. It's no longer something that I have to keep contained. That's the difference.
Thank you very much.
I think that there was something that you said, Casey, that really kind of hit me square.
You have to speak up just a little, can't hear you.
I'm saying that there was something that Casey said that hit me like really square, and I thought, you know, that we're not what our feelings are, you know, that we may feel them, but we are not our feelings. And the other aspect was how we come from people who were hurt. Maybe they were hurt, and they come from people who hurt them. And how, sorry, this is me. Just that our ancestors are here with us, you know, and the process of healing and feeling what we're feeling. In your case, it was anger. I'm not really sure what mine is, but that that you can sit with it and you can just experience it and allow it. I always want to run away from it or get away from it because it scares me. So, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for all of your shares, the aspects that you picked out and, you know, dissected, and it helps. It's interesting. And I also thought of, if you're in prison, I mean, I don't know the experience, but I thought, in a way, being in prison, it's like you're anchored, like you can't go anywhere. You know, you don't have a way to physically get away from it. So I don't know, I kind of can see that could be a mysterious gift in a way, but I kind of wonder how I'm gonna find my anchor, you know, to really explore what that is.
So I've come to find that, like, in myself and in all the people that I've interacted with, we rarely understand or see our true strengths. And when I say everybody here is exceptional, I mean it. Like, I don't often see myself the way other people do, and I struggle with it still. Like, I have an accurate assessment, I believe, of who and what I am, because I am inside of that, but I'm also inside of all those weird patterns and things that are still in there, and it's a process, that it's an ongoing process. And so that's what the song is there for also, is to, when I can't see those aspects of myself, they reflect those back to me. They confirm that. You know what I mean? And so when I say it is difficult to speak in a group and share, it was debilitating for me. I couldn't speak. I used to have a stutter. I used to have all kinds of issues. And so, like, and I know that's a common phobia. People would rather die than speak in public or share something intimate about themselves. So you're already just demonstrating strength and character above and beyond many people. So it's like, I learned to focus on what strengths that I can see and then build from there. Like, okay, if I have this, then, and then someone else is confirming this over here. So and if I love and respect the people around me and I value them, then I have to see what they're saying has to have some merit. You know what I mean? And so that's another difficult thing to do also, but it's easier because it's like, well, I value them, I love them, I think they're correct, I want to believe they're correct. So when we speak each other's truth, that is another aspect of that. You know what I mean? And so the song is strong for you when you cannot be, or when you don't see that you have that strength. You know, and so everybody here is awesome in ways we don't understand. Just like I don't think I'm awesome. You know what I mean? I don't see myself in that light. I just Casey, it's weird. You know what I mean? But other people see me in a different light, and I have to rely upon that when I can't see that about myself or when I doubt that. And I assure you, you are pretty spectacular. And I just barely met you. But I also know that if you're here with us, you're not a sheep animal. You're not a cut below. You're somebody that's meant to affect and impact people's lives. There's no one here that isn't that.
So welcome.
You got that.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Ilana, and everyone, for what a special day today, online and here. May our intentions equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of the way, the Buddha way. Beings are numberless, we vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, we vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, we vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, we vow to be it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Sunday. See you next time.
You guys. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Casey.
Bye, Charles. Bye, Jochen. Bye, Nick.